Are you alone? Do you feel like you're isolated socially? You're feeling down? You feel like you have no friends? I've been there. I've found over the years that one of the ways that I really help people the most is by sharing stories. Stories are our medicine in the native cultural tradition. And stories are our medicine because they give us a sense of reality. They give us a way to compare what we're going through ourselves to what somebody else has been through. They teach us little lessons at many different layers. When you're feeling alone and depressed and lonely and isolated, when you feel like your social world has fallen apart, or it just hasn't come together at all, it can be devastating, and man, the depressive pit you can fall into is deep. It's a hard topic to talk about, actually, because it's very emotional. And as much as I've trained in the skills of counseling and psychotherapy, I tell you that at the deepest level, when I'm with somebody and I'm feeling what they're feeling, I'm with them in that. It's a hard place to be. A lot of it might not even be related to today, to this moment. It might be related to your past experiences and how your memories overwhelm in the present moment. And what do you do with that? How do you work with that? It's a thoughtful process in this little talk. Go down a few inches from here into your heart. The hardest journey and the longest journey is from here to here, from the mind to the heart. Women that I work with, females that I work with, struggle with their emotions and feelings. Women are trained socially to be empathic. And for whatever reason, my early days were very deeply connected to emotions. So I've come to understand that I am an intuitive empath. I can be with people in the depths of their feeling, whatever that might be: depression, anxiety, fear, loneliness, isolation. I can be there with them, and I can journey with them through that, help them through that, help them out of that in some ways. I can teach people the skills of how to move through a depression or through anxiety or through heavy-duty emotional time, or to move through a crisis towards a more resourceful and peaceful experience. Once you know those skills and how to do those micro changes inside of your mind, inside of your emotional self, you give yourself a little bit of detachment from the feelings. You give yourself a little bit of detachment. And that detachment gives you a tiny bit of space between the overwhelming feeling. This is an overwhelming state to be in. And I've been there as well. I've been on the edge. And let me tell you, it's not a pretty place. This video is really about embracing solitude. And what does that mean? It can be really scary. But once you get a little bit of skill, a little bit of experience with this, you go, this isn't as scary as I thought it was. This is actually possible. This is doable. I can use this sort of container of safety that I call solitude as a place to just get myself together just enough so I can cope. I can also use this space to help me to grow in different ways, and different skills and different awarenesses that enable me, give me the capacity to accept myself, accept how I'm feeling, hold how I'm feeling in an honest, open way. Like, there's nothing in the hands here. There's an emptiness, but there's also, wow, there's how I'm feeling. And there's a fullness when I'm overwhelmed. And that feeling is big, and it's right in front of my face. But if I can at least move it from here and look at it, sense it, hear it, feel it, the weight of it. I might have to put my hands down on my lap or down on the table or down to the floor or to the earth, and because it's so bloody heavy, but I feel it, and wow, I can barely hold it because it's like a big blob that's spilling out over everywhere. Sometimes when I'm like this, I'll take it to Mother Earth, and she's very strong. She is so strong. She is so powerful. She is all of our lives all put together in one, and she can hold it all. And all of the extra bits that fall out go back to Mother Earth, and I'm left with a ball in my hand. This is me. This is part of me. What do I do with that? What do you do with that? The first step is to just realize you've actually done an awful lot already. What you've done is you have taken that overwhelming aspect and put it into your hands in a way that you can look at it, you can sense it, you can listen to it, you can get its vibe a little bit differently, you can be slightly detached, you can put your arms out a bit further and get a little bit more distance from it. You could literally lay prostrate on the earth, right? And your arms out in front of you, and you go, oh, that's not even far enough. I want to leave it under a tree. Funny enough, that's the ancient native tradition. When you've got a feeling that is really intense, even a negative feeling, even a really hard feeling, you can bring that, give it back to Mother Earth and put it under a tree. And we give it back to Mother Earth because it's an energy, positive, negative, in between, it doesn't matter. It's energy. It's a truth. It's part of this mystery of life and nature that's manifesting in our being, and we're continuing the cycle of life by giving it back. We literally place it under a tree, and we say, I give this to you, Mother Earth. I give this to you, Creator. I give this to you, God. You know what to do with it. I don't know what to do with it. I have to surrender it because that's all I can do. I don't know how to carry this. So I'm gonna leave at least part of this right here with you. And I rely on your wisdom. And then you turn around and keep walking. It's a hard thing to learn, but man, once you do that a few times, it's very powerful. It's a very symbolic gesture because our struggle becomes transformed, literally transformed, in an organic, physical, genetic, DNA kind of way. Our emotional energy is transformed, transmuted into a new life. And in that transformation, there is a lot of learning, there is a lot of growth, there's a lot of potential that's being released into the environment around us and within us. And so we connect, we reconnect, and that connection gives us new awareness, new hope. One of the myths that I'd like to debunk is that we need a lot of friends. We don't need a lot of friends. In fact, friendship is a rare phenomenon in nature. Why is that? Because friendship is a quality and a depth to relationship that is unique. Friendship is something that's very sacred and special. It's when two people connect and interact and overlap in their sense of sharing and empathy and being for each other, to support each other through thick and thin, in an unconditional, loving way, in a way that goes, you are okay, regardless how you're going right now. I believe you're okay and you will be okay. That kind of friendship comes along not all that often. We want to be able to open ourselves up enough so that we could possibly grow to trust through experience with somebody that comes on our path. And to also acknowledge that friendships don't necessarily last forever. Friendships can be temporary. Somebody can cross our path in a very deep friendship kind of way, but then a few years later, or even a few months later, or a few weeks later, that friendship may shift. The dynamics or circumstances of your life and that person's life might shift, and you move away from that friendship in some sense. The depth of love I've always believed and always felt and always experienced is always there. I have friends that were friends decades ago, like 30 years ago, and I still love them today as deeply as I loved them back then. And in my own way, I pray for them. I wish them well. I send them good energy. I practice the spiritual arts of energy transmission, like Reiki and the native ways that we have learned from our elders. And I send them good and powerful energy for their life, for their wellness. I bless them not only, but the next 7 generations, their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. I hold them up in a cosmos of blessing. This is part of who I am that I've learned over the years. That friendship is about sharing whatever's happening right now. Friendship is about accepting. Friendship is about having courage to share authentic reality, and you having the courage to share your real reality with me. And they don't have to be the same. They don't have to agree. And this is part of the unpredictability of friendship. It's just part of the reality. It's not about being happy or having a kind of an imposed expectation. One size fits all. That's another myth. Friendships are all different, all dynamic. The value of self-esteem is another thing. We need to prioritize a sense of self-care, but also a respect for the other person because they're different from us. And their self-care will require attention. And if we can build them up in their self-care, they can also help us with our self-care. It can be a mutual give and take. Another insight is that there's boundaries that probably need to be respected in most friendships, and that healthy friendships thrive when each individual can understand or articulate clearly enough what those boundaries are. And when they change, especially when they change, the boundaries shift. You need to inform the other person. They need to be part of that evolution with you. And if they're not part of it with you, then the separation really grows very quickly because you're not letting them know, I've changed in this way. You can come along with me. I'd like you to, but I understand if you can't come here with me. It's a new place I'm going into. And if you want to come on the journey, I would love to have you with me. Getting to that point where we have that sense of autonomy, that I can do this on my own if I have to, that's a huge step. And if our friend is genuine in that sense, and they're able to do that where they are in their life, that's pretty awesome too. It shows that they've grown an awful lot as well. Friendships shift and change, and sometimes people journey with us and continue, or maybe you need a time apart where you're readjusting, and maybe you'll come back together down the road. And when that happens, that's magical too, because when you've let something go, wow, that's hard to do. But if it comes back to you, it's often at a different level altogether, and it's fresh and new, and it's 10 times, 100 times more powerful than it was in past. simply because you know that it's genuine and that somebody has re-engaged with you at a different level or a different time of your life. The point that I really want to bring out here is that there's a beauty in solitude that we can discover, we can explore. I've written a whole book on this, on solitude, and I'll put an information link to it in the notes below. But the thing about that book that I wrote during the early time of COVID, as well as reflecting on many years of experience and struggle with solitude and with mindfulness practices, and struggle with meditation, struggle with facing my feelings and emotions as a guy. I struggled with these issues. I needed a lot of time to process. I would engage with people and spend a lot of time alone, processing the feelings from and the impressions and experiences with the individual in my own space so that I could understand this is what they're going through. This is the depth and the parts of that. And this is how I can relate to this. And this is what I'm going through as separate from that, as unique to that. And this is how I can help that individual with what they're going through. And years of personal practice like this was a precursor to my becoming a counselor and psychotherapist. So I had this intensive background of reflecting on relationships and on taking my own journey seriously and building my resources in personal development, which became for me down the road the foundation of professional development, because the skills that I learned through years of journaling. I started in 1978, writing in my journal, and I've written hundreds of volumes of handwritten journals over the years. And I have learned so much through the reflective process that's also spun off into new projects. It's spun off into books and teaching and university courses that I've written, and our current programs we're developing online at awakenability.com emerge in part out of these years of reflexivity that have enabled me to learn these skills of personal awareness that is so valuable, not just for me, but for so many other people. Literally hundreds and thousands of people who I've been able to encourage toward these skills, toward these capacities and abilities, to then be able to use those skills to teach others. This reproduction of this energy of what started for me in the pits of aloneness and depression, anxiety, of social isolation that started in those places in my youth, led me to a whole new sense of self, a whole new way of contributing to other people's lives. Just picture for a moment a kid that spends his time exploring the woods in rural Nova Scotia, Canada, with his puppy dog named Skipper. He was big enough for me as a kid that I could ride him like a horse. And he was awesome. I put my little arms around his neck, and he would take me on journeys. We explored the forest behind the house. I spent hours, I spent days literally exploring the environment that was around the place where we lived. We had many lakes and rivers and a big bog that was in back of the house. There was this sort of forest area and then this large bog. And the bog was such that you could walk on the crunchy earth, and you could sink certain depth into it, and it was wet. You needed to wear your boots, your rubber boots or whatever, your winter boots. It would be frozen over, of course, in the winter usually, but it was safe, obviously, to be there for a kid. And I explored all of these places. It was so magical. And as I grew older, and I struggled with social relationships in school, I would literally hide from the school bus as it was passing by. And I would spend the whole day in the forest, back in the bog, back walking to the lakes. And Skipper and I would stay together for the whole day. And when the school hours were over, I would sneak back home and pretend like I just got off of the bus. The skipper would be all excited and come home with me from the bus stop as if that's how it all happened. But he was good. He was a good pup. He was good at telling lies with me. And nobody picked up on this for a while, even though the school, you think they would have let my parents know. But I remember many days that I just wouldn't show up at school. And back then, things must have been a lot more flexible because I got away with it for a long time. And I found as school years went on, I got more and more socially isolated. I just couldn't cope with the politics of the classroom and the schoolyard. I couldn't cope with the nastiness and the fighting and the overwhelming emotions of other people would just flood me. If one of my compatriots at school was being abused at home, I felt it. If they were having conflict with their dad and their dad was hitting them around the head, I knew it. I felt it. If they were having arguments with their mom, there were things going on, or their parents were fighting, I sensed it. But I didn't understand these impressions and feelings. I was literally scared to death. The only way I knew to cope was self-isolate, step away, and process these heavy-duty impressions and feelings that I was getting, and do that on my own. That was the only way I knew to cope. And so my need then for modulating, or should I say controlling, my social interactions overrode the need for an education in many respects. I didn't have any help to deal with this. Nobody in my adult world at the time understood or even knew that this was going on. If anybody did understand anything about me as a child, as a young adult, it might have been that I was a hypersensitive kid. But how they framed that or how they understood that's another matter. My dad thought I was a sissy. My dad pushed me away. He didn't understand me. He didn't get it. He didn't get that a male could have these intensive experiences of empathy and interconnectivity with other people, and that this was just part of my nature. He didn't understand that. And it took a long time for he and I to get it together. He wasn't on his deathbed until we actually were able to reconcile in some ways and go, yeah, this is who you are. I'm sorry I didn't get it all this time. I really love you. He was able to say a few things to me before he died that have been really important, really helpful and healing, because I didn't have that from him or with him all through those growing years when I really needed him to be there for me, and with me he wasn't. He was distant. And I think this is true for a lot of parents. You just might not get where your kid's at, or your kid might not get where you're at. And there's not just a generational gap, but there's a gap that's produced from the fact that we all frame up and understand and filter our human experience in different ways, through different sensory systems, through different ways of feeling and emotion, through different languages. What is the generation gap? In fact, we could deconstruct that, because there's a lot in that. There's a lot going on in human communication between a parent and a child. When you can get to some of that detail and understand that at that level, it starts to make a lot more sense. And this is part of the reason why I started this video with this feeling. I'm alone. I've got no friends. There's a lot to understand in that. If that's part of your reality right now, I can almost guarantee life is going to evolve. The more that you step up to yourself and face how you're feeling, work through it a bit, and learn about it in a creative way, you shift from the overwhelming depressive feeling to a curiosity that I need to understand this somehow. I need to get this. And it might not happen right away, but it can take some time. But you'll get there. You really will get there. And you'll understand this evolution of your experience is going to become meaningful. it's going to become understandable. And this is what I call the living, breathing spirituality of our personal journeys, of our lives. Spirituality I define as how I make my sense of meaning. And I've studied this at the academic and even social sciences levels. And spirituality is an academic discipline now that is an amazing field of study. And for me, the emphasis in that field is always about the psychological, emotional, interpersonal ways that we create our meaning through understanding our reality, our experience today, now, in this moment. From our experience emerges our awareness. From our living life emerges our conceptions, our ideas. What does this mean? How can I understand this? What ways could I learn about what's going on here? This leads to a sense of personal meaning. And as we develop in personal meaning, we develop in our sense of identity. When we identify with our reality in that sense, we develop a sense of spiritual context, of how things fit together, of what makes sense, of why things happen the way they do in a sense, and how we can live with that, how we can work with that. This is an active spirituality that engages with our sensibilities of our experience, allows our conceptions of experience to be flexible enough so that we can grow in our understanding and not close ourselves off to new growth, but open ourselves up to many new insights. From this hot summer in Australia, in New South Wales, in the mountains, I just remind you to please subscribe. It helps this channel a lot, and it will help you as well if you hit that little notification bell. It'll let you know when new insightful videos are loaded up and come live. Share, please. Please share. Your friends would find this valuable too. Get the link and share it across to Facebook or to your social networks, and let people know that this channel exists or that this video is helpful, and you can share it with them. Maybe it will help one of your friends who's going through a tough time. Maybe it will help one of your family members, or maybe it will help your kid or your parent to get their head around some of these issues you just wish they would understand. And maybe I've articulated things in a certain way at a certain part of this video that you'd like them to see or hear. When you think that you got them in a good moment, let them see that part of the video. Let them see a clip. Copy the clip and send it to them. Maybe that little part would mean the most to them. Copy it up, share it on, and let them see it. Share the love and pay it forward. And that's what we're all about at this channel. We are with you in the struggles of life, in the reality of life. Years ago, I hosted a cable television show in rural Canada. It was called Real Life. And it was all about these real issues that people deal with. And it's such a joy to come back to that sort of spirit of that in this YouTube universe and share these real life topics with you today. May your awakening bring you to the manifestation of every ability that you desire, every ability and capacity that you need, every skill and ability to function and to grow and to be the human being that you so desire and know that you can be. I pray for you. Bless you. Thank you so much.